There are secrets buried not beneath the sands of Egypt, but within them, whispered by the winds that move across the desert, sung by the silence between the stones. For thousands of years, the pyramids have stood like living sentinels, not merely tombs of kings, but vessels of a science the modern world has forgotten, a science that united the spirit, the body, and the eternal rhythm of the universe. And within that silence lies a question that has followed humanity since the beginning of time. How did the ancients preserve the vitality of the body, the clarity of the mind, and the purity of the soul? How did they walk through the years untouched by decay, as if time itself bent to their understanding of life? The ancient Egyptians believed that the human being was not made of flesh alone. To them, the body was a temple that housed divine energy, a mirror of the cosmos. Every organ, every cell, every drop of blood was seen as part of a greater harmony, bound by light and vibration. They saw aging not as a punishment, but as an imbalance, a disconnection between the energy of the body and the sacred currents of the earth and sky. It was said that those who learned to restore this connection could remain young, strong, and radiant long beyond the years allotted by ordinary men. In the beginning, before the first pyramid rose from the desert, there were healers, priests of light known as the Shemsu Hor, followers of the Hawk of the Sun. They were said to possess knowledge brought from a forgotten civilization, one that understood the language of elements. They spoke not only to the gods, but to the water, to the salt, to the sun. They saw no separation between matter and spirit, between prayer and medicine. For them, to heal was to remember, to awaken the divine order already written within the human frame. Modern science still stares at the hieroglyphs carved into temple walls and wonders what the ancients meant by the Ka, the vital double that gave energy to life. Yet to the Egyptians it was clear, the Ka was not a symbol, it was real. It was the unseen electricity of the soul, the current that animated every motion and every breath. They nourished it with sunlight, with water drawn before dawn, with certain minerals and sacred oils. Their rituals were not superstition, they were formulas, precise, methodical, energetic. In the temple of Karnak, under the morning light, the priests once gathered before vast basins of water. They believed that at sunrise, when the first rays of Ra touched the earth, the water transformed. It absorbed the living frequency of light, a golden vibration that, when consumed, realigned the body's inner currents. They would whisper words of power into the water, inscribing invisible patterns with their voices, believing that sound itself could awaken the sleeping codes within every cell. And those who drank with faith, it was said, felt their strength return as if time had reversed its course. Centuries later, physicists would discover that water indeed responds to vibration, that sound, emotion, and thought can change its structure. But the priests of Egypt already knew. They believed that every cell of the human body was mostly water, a living archive that remembered every word spoken to it. To speak blessings into water was to rewrite the memory of the body. To fill it with gratitude, reverence, and light was to restore its youth. In the Papyrus of Ebers, one of the oldest medical texts ever found, there are passages that speak of the liquid of renewal, a clear substance mixed with honey, salt, and sunlight. Modern translators call it a tonic, a primitive remedy, but to the initiated it was much more. It was an alchemical formula, meant to align the human frequencies with the frequencies of the cosmos. The honey was not just nourishment, it was life condensed, sunlight made edible. The salt preserved not only food, but energy, and the water, drawn before dawn, held the vibration of purity, untouched by the chaos of day. Together, these elements were believed to awaken the dormant spark within the flesh, the same spark that once lit the stars. As the centuries passed, this wisdom was hidden, encoded into myths and symbols so that only those with eyes to see could understand. The scarab beetle rolling the ball of the sun across the horizon was not a simple image of rebirth, it was a lesson. That renewal comes through movement, through constant transformation. That which stagnates decays, that which flows remains alive. The secret of youth was not in resisting time, but in keeping energy in motion, the same law that governs the universe itself. When you look upon the statues of ancient Egypt, have you ever noticed how serene their faces appear? They are not mere depictions of rulers. They are symbols of a state of being, calm, centered, eternal. The eyes fixed on the horizon of eternity, the mouth silent, the body strong yet still. They represent what the ancients called Sahu, the perfected form of man, the body made luminous. The journey toward this state was the purpose of their medicine, their rituals, their lives. And perhaps, if one listens deeply enough, those silent statues still speak. They whisper that the true elixir of youth is not a potion or a pill, but a state of harmony, a living resonance between the heart, the breath, and the divine pulse of creation. The ancients sought not to escape aging, but to rise above it, to turn flesh into light. In doing so, they discovered something that modern science is only beginning to glimpse, that the human body is capable of self-renewal when the mind and spirit align with natural law. It is said that deep within the chambers of the Great Pyramid there was a ritual few have ever understood. The initiate would lie within a stone sarcophagus, not to die, but to awaken. Through sound, vibration, and silence, his energy would be recalibrated, his cells resonating with the frequency of the earth itself. When he emerged, he was not the same. His breath was slower, his eyes clearer, his mind still. He had touched the essence of eternity, and eternity had answered. Today we call such things myth. We laugh at the notion that sound could heal, that light could rejuvenate, that water could remember. And yet, quietly, modern laboratories now speak of frequencies that repair DNA, of photons that influence biological function, of water that changes form when blessed. The ancients did not need instruments to prove what they could feel. They lived in harmony with a truth we have forgotten, that every living thing vibrates and that the body can be tuned like an instrument. So the question lingers, what did they know that we have lost? Why did their civilization last thousands of years without decay while ours, with all its knowledge, struggles to stay whole? Could it be that the true secret of youth is not in the conquest of nature but in its remembrance? That the elements as water, salt, sunlight, honey, faith, still carry the same codes of vitality that once sustained the pharaohs themselves? When the priests spoke of immortality, they did not mean to live forever in flesh, but to live fully in spirit, to keep the flame alive. To them, youth was a vibration, not an age. Strength was alignment, not muscle. Beauty was the reflection of balance between the seen and the unseen. Their medicine was sacred geometry in motion, where every ingredient, every ritual, mirrored the structure of the cosmos. To drink pure water at dawn was to draw the breath of creation itself. To stand beneath the sun was to remember one's divine origin. To pray was not to ask, but to awaken. Imagine now for a moment the temple of Luxor at dawn. The first light touches the columns carved with symbols older than any book. The scent of myrrh fills the air. A priest moves slowly, his steps echoing softly. He carries a small vessel of water, shimmering with gold as the sunlight meets its surface. He whispers ancient words, words that shape the very air. Around him the air hums almost imperceptibly, as if the stones themselves are listening. He drinks, and in that act he communes with the divine. To him it is not mere hydration, it is resurrection. This is the essence of the Egyptian secret, that the divine is not somewhere far away, but within every drop, every breath, every ray of light, that youth and strength are the natural states of a body in harmony with spirit, and that disease and aging are not punishments but signals, reminders to return to balance, to remember the sacred order of things. You can feel it even now, can't you? The body responds to this truth, even if the mind resists. Something ancient within you stirs, like the faint echo of a language once spoken by the soul. Because deep down, you know this is not mythology. It is memory, a forgotten wisdom that still lives within your cells. They say that when the heart beats in rhythm with gratitude, the body begins to heal. The Egyptians called this Ma'at, the law of harmony. To live in Ma'at was to align with the universe, to keep the scales of existence in perfect balance. Those who did so aged gracefully, not because they feared death, but because they walked with eternity beside them. So the next time you drink water, think of the Nile, the sacred artery of Egypt. Think of the priests who blessed it at dawn, believing that every sip was a communion with the divine. Think of the sunlight reflecting upon its surface, carrying frequencies of renewal. And perhaps if you drink with the same reverence, something within you will remember. For the secret of the ancients is not lost. It waits, patient as the desert. It waits for those who will listen, who will see not with their eyes, but with their spirit. It waits in the stillness before sunrise, in the first sip of water, in the heartbeat that reminds you, you are alive, you are light, and you were never meant to decay. This is only the beginning of the journey. The sands still whisper, the symbols still speak, and the body, even after thousands of years of forgetting, still remembers how to be young. Night falls over the desert like a velvet curtain, and under the endless sky the stars begin to speak. To the ancient Egyptians, these lights were not distant suns, but living souls, the eyes of gods watching the earth. Each one pulsed with knowledge, rhythm, and power. They believed the human body was made in the image of these celestial lights, a reflection of the cosmos. The veins mirrored the rivers of the Nile, the heart, the sun at its center. The body was a map of the heavens, and to remain young, one had to keep this inner universe in harmony with the outer one. Hidden within temple walls were inscriptions that spoke of the Zep Tepi, the first time, the golden age when the gods walked among men and shared the sacred science of vitality. It was not a myth, they said, but memory, an echo of when humanity still lived in alignment with divine law. During that era, aging was unknown, for the flow of energy within the body was perfectly attuned to the cycles of the earth and the stars. Disease, decay, and weakness only appeared when mankind began to forget this alignment. The priests devoted their lives to remembering. In the temple of Dendera, beneath ceilings painted with the constellations, initiates gathered at midnight for what was known as the rite of rebirth. They stood barefoot upon the stone floor, touching the coolness of the earth. They inhaled deeply, drawing the desert air into their lungs, believing each breath carried particles of the cosmos, fragments of Ra's eternal fire. Around them, oil lamps flickered, casting shapes that danced like memories. The ceremony began with a single sound, the low hum of creation, a vibration so deep it resonated through bone and water alike. They believed that vibration was the language of life, that the body was not healed by force, but by resonance. Each organ had its frequency, each emotion its tone. When they fell out of harmony, illness emerged. When the right sound was spoken or sung, the imbalance dissolved and youth returned. It is said the high priests could speak a single word and cause pain to vanish, because their voices carried the frequency of truth. The word itself, in Egyptian, was sacred. Heka, the power of sound, intention, and energy combined. Modern language translates it as magic, but the ancients knew it as science, the ability to align human energy with cosmic law. The greatest healers were not those who prescribed herbs, but those who understood Heka. They whispered to the body like one speaks to a friend who has forgotten his purpose, reminding it of its original design, to grow strong again, to be whole again, to shine again. In those days there were no mirrors but water. Still, silent water served as the reflection of truth. Before sunrise, the healers would gaze into its surface and speak affirmations not of vanity but of remembrance. I am eternal. I am light. I am the image of the divine. They believed the water absorbed these words and carried them into their cells when they drank it. And so their bodies became living temples of renewal. Even now, hieroglyphs record the mixture of honey, salt, and sunlight, the same trinity found in nearly every sacred recipe. Honey symbolized the sweetness of life, the power of preservation, and the essence of immortality, as it never decays. Salt was the crystallized soul of the earth, containing both purity and strength. And sunlight was the messenger of Ra, the eternal current that animated all living beings. Together, they formed the sacred triad of youth. When taken in ritual, not as medicine but as offering, it was said to reawaken the divine current in the blood. Archaeologists today find small jars sealed with resin buried beside mummies. Inside them, traces of golden honey still glisten, thousands of years untouched. Scientists marvel at how it remains pure, unspoiled, alive. But the priests of old would smile, for to them it was proof of what they always knew, that true preservation comes not from chemical force, but from alignment with divine vibration. The honey remembered. It was alive with the sun. And so was the body. They saw it as a living temple, each bone, each organ, a chamber of sacred purpose. The heart was not merely a muscle. It was the throne of the soul, the liver, the seat of courage, the stomach, the furnace of transformation, the spine, the ladder to the heavens. In every motion, they sought balance, for to disturb one part of the temple was to invite disorder to all. Their medicine was not blind experimentation, it was observation of nature's law. They studied how the lotus opened at sunrise and closed at dusk, and from that they learned the timing of the body's rhythms. They observed how the desert cooled at night and how water condensed in the morning dew, and from that they understood renewal. They saw how the sun's energy was absorbed by the palm, the olive, the fig, and they pressed those essences into oils to anoint the skin, believing that the skin, like the earth, could drink the light. These oils were not perfumes, they were conduits of solar energy. To anoint the body was to coat it in light, to feed the ka. Priests anointed themselves before prayer, before healing, before rest. In the papyrus of Ani, a line reads, "He who walks in light will not wither." The phrase was both literal and symbolic. The body bathed in sacred oils retained its glow, skin smooth, joints supple, heart calm. The aging of the flesh slowed, for the energy within it flowed freely. And yet the greatest secret was not in the oil or the honey or the salt, it was in the way they were used, in reverence. Every act was sacred, every breath intentional, every motion aligned with gratitude. The ancients believed that gratitude itself changed the frequency of the body, that cells rejoiced when bathed in it. They said, to thank is to become divine again, for gratitude brings coherence, and coherence brings youth. In the inner chambers of the temple of Abydos, there was an initiation known as the Rite of Sound and Silence. The initiate would spend 40 days in solitude, listening not to words, but to the subtle tones within his own being, the hum of blood, the rhythm of breath, the whisper of thought. In the quiet, he learned the hidden symphony of his own existence. When he returned, he could heal by sound alone. He would place his hand upon the ill and hum, and the vibration, perfectly attuned, would restore the flow of energy where it had stagnated. And here lies one of the most astonishing truths of their science, the understanding that all disease is disharmony, and all healing is restoration of music. Youth, therefore, is the perfect song, the rhythm of the soul unbroken by noise. When the heart beats in time with the pulse of creation, when the breath moves like the tides of the Nile, the body becomes timeless. They also knew that emotion was energy, the most potent medicine or poison. Fear constricted the flow of life while love expanded it. Bitterness hardened the organs while forgiveness softened them. The ancients did not separate emotion from health. They treated the heart before the body. If one harbored anger, no tonic would work. The cure was always inner harmony first, and this, perhaps, was their greatest difference from modern science. They did not seek to conquer illness, but to converse with it. They asked what message it brought, what imbalance it revealed. Only then did they heal. At the heart of their philosophy was the law of correspondence. As above, so below, as within, so without. The cosmos and the body were reflections of one another. When the stars shifted, so did the tides within the blood. When the moon waned, the body released. When it waxed, the body replenished. They timed their fasts and feasts according to these rhythms, knowing that to ignore them was to invite chaos. During the equinox, when day and night stood in perfect balance, the priests would gather for the ceremony of renewal of flesh. They would face the horizon, hands raised, eyes closed. As the first rays of the sun emerged, they would chant the words Ankh Emra, life in the sun. The chant was said to awaken the energy channels that slept during darkness, to flood the body with light, to purify the blood. Many who practiced this regularly were known to live beyond 100 years, their bodies strong, their minds clear. Even the architecture of Egypt held the secret. The temples and pyramids were not mere structures, they were frequency machines. Their stones were chosen for their resonance. When sound filled their halls, it vibrated through the body like a tuning fork. Pilgrims would enter weak and weary and emerge radiant. The pyramid, it is said, was the greatest of all, a monument of healing frequencies aligned to the stars. Those who lay within its heart were restored. In modern times, researchers have measured strange energies inside the Great Pyramid, electromagnetic fields that seem to gather in its central chamber, harmonizing at frequencies similar to the human heartbeat. Coincidence, they say. But the priests of Ra would have smiled again, for they built not by chance but by knowledge. They knew how geometry could shape energy, how energy could preserve life. The pyramid, they taught, was not a tomb, it was a transformer, a living conduit of renewal. And here the veil begins to lift. The secret of the Egyptians was never a secret at all. It was a remembrance that the elements around us are alive, conscious, responsive, that the body is not separate from nature, but an extension of it. To care for the body was to honor the divine. To heal the body was to awaken the soul. They knew that immortality was not endless time, but endless harmony. And those who mastered this harmony walked the earth as radiant beings, untouched by age, shining like the sun they worshipped. They whispered that the secret to youth was not hidden in gold or elixirs, but in returning to the sacred rhythm of creation, in the morning prayer, in the silent gratitude, in the simple act of touching the earth barefoot and breathing with intention, in remembering that the divine lives not above but within. And perhaps now, after thousands of years, we are ready to listen again to the sound of water blessing our cells, to the hum of the heart that beats in gratitude, to the light that pours through every breath. For the secret has never left. It has only waited for us to remember. The true transformation did not happen in temples, nor under the watch of priests. It happened in silence, in the moment when the initiate faced himself and realized that the gods he sought were never outside of him. In ancient Egypt, transformation was not about changing what one was, but remembering what one had always been. To become young again was not a matter of reversing time. It was a matter of restoring connection. Time only ages what forgets its source. When the initiate first entered the House of Life, the ancient healing sanctuaries reserved for the spiritual physicians of the Nile, he came not with diseases, but with burdens. The priests would ask not, "What hurts you?" but, "What have you forgotten?" Because they knew every pain, every wrinkle, every trembling of the body was a symptom of separation, from nature, from self, from light. The process of healing was the process of returning. Inside the sanctuaries, every detail was intentional. The air was perfumed with resins of frankincense and myrrh, the most sacred of scents, chosen not only for their fragrance, but for their vibration. They calmed the breath, expanded the lungs, and opened the subtle pathways of energy that ran through the body. Pathways that modern science now recognizes as meridians, though the Egyptians called them the Neteru roads. The walls were covered with images of gods not to be worshipped, but to be mirrored. Each deity represented an aspect of the human being: courage, intuition, clarity, love, endurance. To contemplate Horus was to awaken vision. To invoke Isis was to awaken compassion. To meditate on Osiris was to awaken rebirth. The gods were never outside. They were archetypes of the divine energies sleeping within. Healing began when one recognized themselves in the gods, and so the initiate began his transformation. He would first fast, not to punish the body, but to purify the flow of life through it. Fasting was seen as sacred silence of the flesh, a moment for the organs to listen again to the cosmic rhythm. He would drink water infused with honey and salt, prepared before dawn, and as he drank, he would whisper prayers of remembrance. "I receive light. I restore balance. I return to Maat." The words were not superstition. They were frequencies. Each syllable a tone that carried instruction to the cells. On the second day, the body would begin to change. The skin would glow with warmth as the impurities released. The pulse slowed, the breath deepened. But the most profound change occurred within the heart. The priests knew the heart was the first organ created and the last to fade. They taught that every heartbeat was a prayer, and that when one lived in harmony, the heart's rhythm matched the vibration of the universe. When one lived in fear, the rhythm broke. And so the central act of their healing was to bring the heart back into rhythm. They used music, gentle, slow, deliberate tones played on the sistrum, a sacred instrument whose sound was said to awaken the ka. The vibration of the sistrum resonated through the bones, loosening the stagnation that bound emotion to the body. As the music filled the air, tears often came, not of sadness, but of release. In those tears, the body began to breathe again. The priests would smile, for they knew, the one who weeps is the one who begins to heal. And then, there was the ritual of sunlight, the most sacred of all. The initiate would be led to the temple roof at dawn. As the first light touched his skin, the priest would anoint his body with oil mixed with gold dust, symbolizing the union of man and the sun. The warmth of the light on the skin was not mere heat, it was energy, photons carrying the same vibration that gave birth to life. They believed this light recharged the ka, the vital body, the same way the sun revives the desert after night. Modern science now knows what they sensed intuitively, that sunlight triggers the creation of energy within cells, awakening vitality. But the Egyptians saw beyond biology. They saw communion. When the ritual ended, the initiate was told to speak no words for a full day. Silence was the second light. It allowed the energy to settle. In stillness, he could feel the flow of power moving within, the pulse of life like a river beneath his skin. Many reported visions during this time, not dreams, but awakenings. They would see symbols of gold serpents, blooming lotuses, radiant suns. Each vision carried a message. Transformation had begun. Days later, he would be led to the chamber of the mirror, a place where no light entered except a single beam reflected from polished copper. There he would gaze upon himself and be asked, "Who are you?" It was the only question that mattered, for transformation could not occur unless he remembered his essence. Some would weep, others laugh, some tremble, for in that question lay the secret of eternity. The one who answered truthfully, "I am the light that breathes in all things," was reborn. This rebirth was not poetic, it was real. Their bodies changed, their eyes clearer, their movements fluid, their hearts steady. They became living symbols of vitality. The priests called this state Sa'an Kai, the double life. It was said that those who achieved it lived both in the physical and divine realms, sustained by the same energy that fed the stars. They could walk for days without fatigue, think for hours without strain, and heal others with a touch, for the energy within them overflowed. One papyrus fragment from the temple of Komombo describes such a man. His skin glowed as the morning sun, his eyes saw through shadow, his hands carried peace. The fragment continues, he remembered the name of his soul, and so decay could not touch him. For the Egyptians believed that everything that has a name is eternal. To know one's true name, the secret name known only to the gods, was to transcend time. The name carried the vibration of purpose. When spoken with awareness, it tuned the entire body to divine frequency. As transformation deepened, the initiate learned to listen, not with ears, but with presence. He could feel when the earth was speaking, when the wind carried messages, when his own breath echoed cosmic rhythm. He learned that to walk barefoot on sand was not a physical act, but an exchange, energy moving between earth and body, renewing the circuits of life. The Egyptians called this katem, to draw the life of the earth. He learned that food, too, was energy. They ate not for pleasure, but for purpose. Fresh fruits, honey, seeds, and herbs, each chosen for vibration. Dates, for example, were called Ra's drops, believed to hold the fire of the sun. Salt was the tears of Isis, purifying and binding the elements. When they ate, they blessed the food, not out of superstition but recognition. They believed blessing transformed the frequency of matter, making it luminous. Transformation was not only physical, it was mental and spiritual. The initiate was taught to command thought, to replace fear with truth, doubt with gratitude. For thoughts, they said, are waves that sculpt the body's water. To think illness, said the high priest Imhotep, is to carve weakness into the flesh. Modern science now observes this as the placebo effect, yet the Egyptians saw it as sacred law. Thought is vibration, and vibration becomes form. As the days passed, the initiate began to radiate peace. His body moved differently, slower but stronger. His breath was long and quiet. When he closed his eyes, he could feel the heartbeat of the Nile within his chest. He was no longer merely a man or woman. He was the earth remembering itself. The transformation reached its peak in the Chamber of Stillness, the same room where the pharaohs prepared for eternity. Here the initiate lay inside a stone vessel carved to match the human form. Around him, the walls were etched with stars, constellations, and serpents of light, symbols of rebirth. The priests began the chant of Sa Sekem Sahu, power of the spirit made luminous. The vibration filled the chamber, resonating through stone and flesh. Slowly, the initiate's awareness expanded beyond the body. He felt weightless, timeless, connected to all, and in that state he understood youth was not the absence of age, but the presence of harmony. Strength was not the domination of muscle, but the alignment of energy. Life was not measured in years, but in light. When the ritual ended, he emerged changed. His gaze no longer sought meaning in the world, it emanated it. His presence alone calmed others, as if he carried a memory of eternity within him. To the people, he was a healer. To himself, he was simply one who remembered. The transformation was complete, but it was never an end. It was the beginning of a new way of being, a life lived in constant remembrance of the sacred connection between the physical and the divine. Every morning became a ritual of gratitude, every drop of water a blessing, every breath a renewal, and this is where the true essence of the Egyptian secret lies, in remembering that the temple is not built of stone, but of flesh and spirit. The alchemy of honey, salt, and light still exists, not in dusty papyri, but in the daily choices of how one lives, breathes, and honors the life within. The body is the pyramid, the heart is the chamber, the breath is the offering, the spirit is the eternal flame. Those who understand this no longer chase youth, they embody it. They do not fear time, for they live outside its reach. They walk through life not as victims of decay, but as witnesses of eternal renewal. And when the world around them grows noisy, they return to silence, the same silence that once filled the temples of the Nile. In that silence, the body remembers how to be light again. It is said that on the final day of the Egyptian initiation, when the initiate had completed the cycle of purification, silence, sound, and remembrance, he was led into the deepest chamber of the temple, a place so quiet that he could hear his own heartbeat echo against the stone. There, surrounded by inscriptions of the stars and the words of the gods, he would face the ultimate revelation. The secret was never in the temple. It was in him. The temples were mirrors, stone reflections of the human body. The Great Pyramid was the spine, the sanctuaries the heart, the hidden chambers the soul. What was built in stone was meant to remind man of what already existed within. The priest would whisper, "You are the living pyramid." And the initiate, for the first time, would feel it, the energy rising from the base of his spine to the crown of his head, like the Nile flowing from source to sea. He would realize that the same current that moved the river moved through him. The same light that lit the desert sun lived in his heart. The same rhythm that guided the stars guided his breath. He was not separate from creation. He was creation, remembering itself. This was the awakening, the moment when body and soul became one song again. The Egyptians called it Akhu, the luminous spirit, the form beyond form. When this awakening occurred, the initiate was said to shine faintly in darkness, his aura visible to those around him, a golden glow that emanated peace. To reach Akhu was to transcend decay, for light does not age. And so, the temple that once felt like stone now felt alive. The very walls seemed to breathe, the air humming with awareness. The initiate understood then that everything was alive, not metaphorically, but truly. The sand carried memory, the wind carried messages, the stars sang with purpose. Everything was consciousness. To touch anything was to touch God. This realization reshaped his understanding of the world. The earth was not a place of exile. It was a living being, and humanity its cells. Every river, a vein, every mountain, a bone, every breath of wind, a pulse. To harm it was to harm oneself. To love it was to renew both body and planet. He realized that the secret of youth and strength extended beyond the individual, that the vitality of a person was the vitality of the earth reflected through them. It is here, in this ancient understanding, that the modern heart finds its cure. For the Egyptians did not seek immortality in defiance of nature, but in unity with it. They did not worship gods as distant powers, but as living forces within every drop of rain, every ray of light. Ra was not merely the sun, he was the fire that burns in every heartbeat. Isis was not a mythic queen, she was the compassion that binds the world. Osiris was not a distant ruler, he was the rhythm of life, death, and renewal within all things. When the initiate understood this, his fear dissolved. Fear of aging, of death, of loss, all melted away in the realization that energy never dies. It only changes form. The skin may wrinkle, but light does not fade. The heart may slow, but the current continues. He understood what the modern world has forgotten, that life and death are not opposites but mirrors, and that to live fully is to be in harmony with both. In this awakening, science and spirit became one. He saw that the frequencies of the earth pulsed in the same rhythm as the human brain in meditation, what modern researchers call the Schumann resonance. He saw that the geometry of the cells mirrored the geometry of the pyramids. He saw that the spiral of the galaxies echoed the spiral of DNA. Everything, from the smallest atom to the vastest star, was built upon the same pattern, the sacred spiral, the eternal rhythm of creation. He remembered then the words carved in gold on the walls of Edfu. He who understands the pattern understands the divine. The pattern was not just mathematics, it was life itself. The ancients studied it through symbol and ritual. Today we glimpse it through physics and biology. But the truth is the same. When energy flows in harmony, there is health. When the pattern breaks, there is decay. Healing, youth, vitality, all are restorations of the original pattern, the divine geometry written into every cell. The Egyptians taught that the body could regenerate because it was made of light, slowed into matter. When one remembered the light, the matter obeyed. That is why their healing rituals began not with medicine, but with awareness. The first step to healing was always awakening, to remember one's divine nature. Once that realization was complete, the body followed naturally, reorganizing itself to match the higher vibration of truth. In the temple of Saqqara, deep beneath the earth, there was a hall where the walls shimmered with inlaid gold and turquoise. Here initiates practiced the rite of breath and fire. They would stand in a circle, breathing in unison, facing the rising sun. As they inhaled, they imagined drawing golden light into their lungs. As they exhaled, they envisioned sending that light through every cell. The priests believed that breath carried divine fire, the spark of creation. By breathing with awareness, one relit the inner flame. They taught that when the breath becomes sacred, the blood becomes pure. This was not a belief, it was experience. They felt it. The pulse quickened, the skin warmed, the mind cleared. Modern science would call this oxygenation, cellular activation, hormone release, but the Egyptians understood it as divinity in motion. To them, science and spirit were not two languages, but one truth spoken in different tones. The initiate, now luminous, was taken one last time to the edge of the Nile. The sun was setting, the same sun he had once greeted at dawn. He knelt, touched the water, and whispered his gratitude. "You are in me, and I am in you." For the Nile, to him, was no longer a river but a living being, a flow of memory that connected heaven and earth. He realized that every molecule of water in his blood had once traveled through oceans, clouds, and rains, that life itself was a circulation of the divine. In that moment, he felt immortal, not because he would live forever, but because he finally understood that he always had. It was in this awareness that the heart of Egypt's wisdom pulsed, that divinity was not above but within, that health was not conquest but cooperation, that youth was not the privilege of the few but the birthright of all who remembered. And this remembering was contagious. Those who met the awakened ones felt it, a calmness, a presence, a silent warmth that made their own hearts remember too. Even today, the stones of those temples hum faintly in the desert heat. Tourists walk their halls unaware that the air around them is still charged with the frequency of those who remembered. The light still moves along the carved symbols, the same light that once ignited the car of the living. When you walk there with reverence, you feel it, a subtle vibration under your skin, a tingling in the heart, a whisper reminding you that you too are made of that same divine fire. The awakening of the ancients was not meant for priests alone. It was meant for humanity. They believed that one day, when the world again lost its balance and its people forgot the sacred rhythm, the memory would return, not through temples, but through the hearts of those ready to remember. Perhaps that time is now. Perhaps you, reading these words, are hearing that same whisper that called the initiates of the Nile. The whisper says, "You are light slowed into form. You are water that remembers. You are the sun made flesh. Do not seek youth. Embody harmony. Do not chase time and align with eternity." The secret is not ancient. It is eternal. The Egyptians wrote that when humanity would once again see God in the water, the earth, the air, and the light, the world would heal. The body would remember. The heart would return to rhythm. The earth would breathe again. And mankind would rediscover not how to live forever, but how to live fully, strong, vibrant, luminous. For the true temple has never fallen. It lives within you. Every cell of your body is a pillar carved with sacred geometry. Every breath is a hymn to the sun. Every heartbeat is the echo of creation itself. The only task is to awaken, to remember that you were never separate, never broken, never old. You are the continuation of the same light that once rose over the Nile. You are the living secret. The desert, once golden and radiant beneath the sun, now cools beneath the quiet blue of twilight. The sands breathe softly, as if exhaling after centuries of holding secrets too sacred for the noise of the modern world. The temples fade into silhouettes, and the stars awaken, eternal witnesses to every civilization that has risen and fallen. In this silence, the story of the ancients is not lost. It hums beneath the earth, carried by every grain of sand, by every wave of the Nile, by every human heart that dares to remember. It is here, in this hush after revelation, that the true meaning of the Egyptian secret is understood, not as a ritual of the past, but as a living call to the present. The same energy that sustained the pharaohs and their healers still moves through the air you breathe. It flows in your blood. It listens to your thoughts. It responds to your gratitude. You have never been apart from it, only distracted from its music. The ancients never sought to escape time. They sought to harmonize with it. They understood that life is not meant to be a fight against aging or decay, but a dance with transformation. The body, like the seasons, changes, yet within it, the eternal pulse remains untouched. They knew that true youth is not measured by the smoothness of skin, but by the brightness of spirit, that the light in one's eyes is not the reflection of years, but of remembrance. As the priests of old walked through the corridors of their temples, they would pause before the image of a lotus, a flower that blooms from the mud yet remains unstained. To them this was the image of man, born in the earth touched by shadow, yet capable of rising toward the light each morning. The lotus was not just a plant, it was the promise that purity and renewal are possible, no matter the depths from which one must rise. In that image lies the secret to staying young, the willingness to bloom again and again, even after the world forgets your name. In your own life, you have seen how energy changes when you return to stillness, how the heart slows, how the breath deepens, how the noise of the world fades until only your essence remains. That essence, the silent awareness beneath thought, is what the Egyptians called the eternal spark. It does not grow old, for it does not belong to time. When you touch it, even for a moment, your body remembers what it was meant to be, balanced, radiant, whole. The priests used to say that healing is not an act, but a remembrance that within each of us lies the same divine pattern that shapes the stars. When we remember this pattern, the body aligns itself again. The heart softens, the breath steadies, the cells begin to glow with the quiet joy of belonging. The modern world has other names for this: coherence, balance, homeostasis. But the essence is unchanged. What is remembered becomes renewed. In the quiet of the temple ruins, you can almost hear their voices, not as echoes of the past, but as invitations to return. Breathe with the sun, they whisper. Speak kindly to your water. Bless your food. Be still long enough to hear your soul. These were not metaphors to them. They were instructions, formulas of light written in the simplest acts of daily life. Each moment was a ritual, each gesture sacred, and that is why their youth endured beyond their years, because every breath was prayer, every action aligned with gratitude. They taught that every person is both healer and healed. That divinity is not bestowed, but remembered. When a man touches the earth with awareness, he awakens the same energy that once flowed through the priests of Ra. When a woman prays over her cup of water, she calls upon the same force that sustained the healers of Thebes. The sacred does not age, because it exists outside the measure of years. It lives in intention, in the way you move, the way you love, the way you listen. And so, the reflection of this ancient wisdom falls upon us now. In a world of noise, silence becomes the temple. In a world of haste, stillness becomes the healing. In a world that worships youth, remembrance becomes the cure. The Egyptians understood that eternity is not a place, but a state of being. When you align your heart with the rhythm of creation, when your thoughts, breath, and actions move with harmony, you step out of time. You return to the current that never began and will never end. Look at the night sky. The same stars that guided the ancient builders still burn above you. They shine not for memory, but for continuity. They remind you that nothing is truly lost and only transformed. You too are transformation embodied. Every breath you take is proof that energy moves endlessly through you. Every thought of gratitude is a spark that brightens the field around your heart. Every act of kindness is a prayer that strengthens the invisible architecture of the world. To keep the body young, one must first make peace with the soul, for it is the soul that writes the story of the body, in every heartbeat, in every cell. When the soul feels seen, the body relaxes. When it feels loved, the body renews. That is why the Egyptians filled their days with reverence, not for superstition, but for alignment. They lived in gratitude, because they understood that gratitude is the song that keeps the heart in rhythm with creation. Perhaps you have felt moments when time seemed to dissolve, when you stood at sunrise, when you held someone's gaze, when you heard a piece of music so beautiful it silenced thought. In those moments, you were not aging. You were remembering. You were in harmony. And that is the essence of the Egyptian secret: to live each day as a ceremony of remembrance, to keep the inner flame steady, even as the outer world shifts. The old papyri say, "The body decays when the heart forgets the sun." It means that when we lose touch with our source of light, the light of joy, gratitude, love, truth, the body follows the fading rhythm. But when the heart returns to light, the body quickens again, as if dawn has touched it. Every act of love, every sincere breath is a sunrise within. The priests knew this truth so deeply that even in their final breaths they smiled, for they knew they were not ending, only returning to the light that had always been theirs. And now, across centuries, that same truth calls to you. The light you seek is not lost. The strength you desire is not gone. The youth you long for is not something to chase. It is something to awaken. It lives in your gratitude, in your stillness, in your breath. It lives in the way you remember that your body is sacred, that your words shape water, that your thoughts sculpt life. You are the temple. You are the sun. You are the water that remembers. You are the continuation of an unbroken lineage of light, a current that began before the pyramids and will continue long after the stars have burned out. When you close your eyes tonight, breathe deeply and whisper as the priests once did, "I remember. I am light in motion." And as you do, something ancient will stir inside you. Not imagination, but memory. The memory of walking through sacred halls where every stone hummed with life. The memory of feeling your heart beat in rhythm with the universe. The memory of knowing, beyond all doubt, that you were never separate from the divine, that you are and have always been eternal. So let the silence hold you now as the desert held the temples, as the water held the reflection of the stars. Let it remind you that the secret of youth is not hidden in age, but in awareness. You were born of light. You breathe the rhythm of creation. You are even now part of the same eternal song the ancients once sang beneath the sun of Egypt. And when morning comes and light fills your room once more, may you rise as they did, not merely awake but awakened.